Hello, and welcome to this PowerPoint presentation about the role of gossip in the workplace. This is something I really enjoy talking about because gossip is one of my main areas of research. I was one of the first people to do experiments on gossip a little more than 20 years ago, and I've spent quite a bit of time since then writing about it and doing interviews, and so I may go on a little bit too long on this topic. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about gossip. It's no secret that when you hear the word, you immediately think of something bad, something negative, something evil. And nobody wants to hear themselves described as a gossip. A lot of the strong negative feelings about gossip has a religious basis. So you often hear gossip discussed as a sin. One can find passages in the Bible. Wrongdoers eagerly listen to gossip. Liars pay close attention to slander, warning us not to do this. Here are another list of things talking about the evils of gossip. And there's no shortage of media aimed at young people to try to educate them about the evils of gossip. The advice that's usually given is if you didn't hear it with your own ears or see it with your own eyes, don't invent it with your small mind and share it with your big mouth. Gossip hurts the body of Christ. It divides, it slanders, it produces strife, it separates friends, and it is sin. And these negative impressions of gossip aren't limited to religious settings. I did a Google search just using the words workplace gossip as the search terms. And here's a sample of the things that came up right away. Ways to stop negative office gossip. Creating gossip-free work zones. The danger of workplace gossip. How to deal with office gossip. Gossip creates a toxic work environment. What to do when you are the subject of office gossip. So it's clear just from this superficial Google search even that gossip is considered overwhelmingly to be negative and a problem in the workplace. So given this background, it's perhaps not surprising that a guy like me who writes about some of the positive parts of gossip has received an awful lot of hate mail, many of it from religious people telling me about the place in hell that's reserved for me. But I take the position that gossip is a social skill, not a character flaw. I don't deny that gossip has negative impacts sometimes. You get in trouble if you don't do it well. But to talk about gossip as if it's possible not to do it is unreasonable. It's part of human nature, and you might as well ask people to stop breathing as to stop gossiping. I think part of the problem in discussing gossip in a rational way is that many people have a very narrow definition of what they think gossip is. First of all, they think that gossip is something that other people do. If they're discussing information about some person, they think of themselves as expressing concern or sharing important information. But whatever it is they're doing, they don't think of it as gossip. And from their point of view, gossip is always a negative thing. Some people will even define it as sharing false information about a person. And gossip has a much more general definition. When gossip researchers define gossip, there are a few key characteristics that something has to have in order to be defined as gossip. First of all, It has to be talk about a person. So if we're discussing possible future events or other things like that, if they're not talking about a specific person, it's not considered to be gossip. Secondly, that person that you're talking about has to be physically absent at the time. I can't gossip to you about yourself. By definition, we're talking about somebody who isn't there. We're sharing information that is not widely known, so we're sharing stuff that can be secret, and often that information is stuff that we can make moral judgments about. We can approve of it or disapprove of it, and we think it tells us something about the character of the person we're discussing. And finally, another component of gossip is that it's inherently entertaining. We can't look away. We can't stop ourselves. Nobody ever says, oh, I got to go gossip with my friends now. It's an irresistible temptation. We love gossip for the same reasons that we love ice cream and donuts and sex, and for the very same reason. It turns out to be evolutionarily advantageous to us. I'll come back to that later on in this presentation, but I think that gossip is part of human nature because our ancestors who were interested in the private lives of other people were much more successful than those who were not. But I will come back to that eventually. So let's return to the issue of whether gossip in the workplace is good or bad. And I'll cut to the chase and give you the punchline first. It can be both good and bad. And let me talk about the distinction between good gossip and bad gossip. So how, you might ask, could gossip ever be good? And is it something that only women do? Well, no. Men certainly gossip as well. And it's a human universal. It's something that you find everywhere. People love gossip. So what is it that makes some gossip good gossip, while other gossip is considered to be bad gossip? Good gossip is gossip that doesn't serve the selfish interests of a particular individual, but it rather serves the purpose of the group. It's good for the group as a whole, not for any one individual. And so good gossip functions in a number of different ways. First of all, it resolves ambiguity about what the group's values are and what the rules of the group behavior are. And this helps to socialize newcomers into the way of the group. Think of it this way. When you start a new job after you graduate from Knox College and you're in this manager trainee program at a big company, there are a lot of things that people may not come right out and tell you. How formally do you really need to dress for work? When 5 o'clock comes and it's time to quit, can you just run out the door? Or is it considered sort of desirable to hang around a little bit longer? How familiar can you be with your boss? Are you allowed to call the boss by his or her first name or not? These are rules that are not usually written down anywhere. And so you figure them out by listening in to the gossip network. What are people saying about other individuals who dress a certain way or talk a certain way to the boss or leave at 10 minutes to 5 every day? We get socialized into the rules of the group's culture by listening in to the gossip network. Another positive aspect of gossip in the workplace is that it keeps people in line. It makes them be good citizens. If you are a slacker who's tempted to sort of sit back and let other people pick up your share of the load, knowing that other people are going to talk about you, knowing that your reputation is going to suffer, is one of the things that forces you to do what you're supposed to do. So it deters and punishes people who evolutionary psychologists refer to as free riders, people who cheat by trying to profit through the efforts of other people. It's also a way of keeping socially dominant group members in check. If somebody is getting a little too pushy around the office, keeping them in check by gossiping about them and monitoring their behaviors is a way to sort of equal the playing field. And research confirms that people are less likely to disapprove of gossip if it's perceived to serve the interests of the group rather than the interest of the individuals. And there's been a ton of research, much of it done by anthropologists, that show that gossip does function in this way in a wide range of different social groups, including hunter-gatherer societies, California cattle ranchers, Maine lobster fishermen, even college rowing teams. So gossip does in fact seem to serve this positive social function in most human groups. Another workplace benefit of good gossip is that it creates social bonds and alliances between people. It creates a sense of belongingness and trust. If I share sensitive information with you, this is a clear sign of trust. It's indicating that I trust you to take the sensitive information and not use it in a negative way that's going to be harmful to our group or to me as a person. And so getting into the network and having people share information with you indicates that they like you and trust you and accept you. Some researchers have actually compared gossip to the grooming that goes on in primates. And this really fits nicely with the stereotype of the barbershop or the beauty salon where people are getting their hair groomed as a gossip center. The idea that this grooming and gossip goes together can even fit nicely with what goes on among primates. It's the grooming that takes place to resolve conflicts and bond the animals to each other. So think of gossip as social and verbal grooming. So, what are some of the benefits for an organization with a gossip network in place? Can gossip in organizations ever really be thought of as good? Well, some of the benefits include the following. We've already talked about socializing newcomers into the work group by helping them figure out what the group's norms and values are. We've also talked about the fact that it's a way of promoting cooperation, getting people to stop cheating, and spreading social power more equally throughout the work group. It prevents any one individual from becoming too big for his britches and exerting more influence than one person should be exerting. And harmless gossiping with colleagues boosts group cohesiveness, morale, and job satisfaction. And a shrewd manager can also use the gossip grapevine to get information around when they're not quite allowed to make an official announcement about something yet, but they think it's important for their employees to know about something that's coming down the pike. So a skillful manager can take advantage of a gossip network. Now, you will occasionally hear about the high-minded individual who considers this whole thing to be very unseemly and beneath them, and they will refuse to participate in the workplace gossip network. I personally have encountered quite a number of people who indignantly say to me after I've given a talk on gossip or they've heard an interview of mine, say, "I never gossip." Well, I think they're deluding themselves. They certainly do gossip. At the very least, they have a much narrower definition of what gossip is than most people do. But if you're in a workplace, for example, and you refuse to be part of the gossip network and announce this, what you're essentially saying to your coworkers is, I don't like you, I don't trust you, I don't want to be part of your network. And this is not going to ingratiate yourself with your coworkers. It's kind of a ticket to social isolation. Now, studies have confirmed a number of the things we've been talking about. We do evaluate other individuals' tendencies to gossip and their skill at gossiping, and this is important for how much we like them and trust them and how willing we are to cooperate with them. Curiously, we trust them and like them more, but we cooperate with them less. And several studies have demonstrated that gossip networks do in fact promote generosity and cooperation within groups, and that it's concern about one's reputation that drives this effect. So people who are good gossipers are usually fairly popular people. They know stuff, and if you're looking for information, they're a place to go. but at the same time, they have a reputation for being discreet and sensitive in the way they handle information, so people trust them with information. So let's return to the question of why I believe gossip might be an evolutionary adaptation. Let's start by thinking about how our ancestors lived through most of human evolution. Through well over 90% of human evolution, our ancestors lived in small cooperative groups that were in competition with other groups. So you were in a small group of people, probably no more than about 150 or so, and you knew all of these people in a face-to-face personal way. Now, it was a tense situation in many respects because the people within your group were people that you'd be competing with for dividing up resources and obtaining mates and all of the other things that are in limited supply in the group. But you also had to cooperate with them for your group to be successful compared to other groups. And so other human beings have always been our most intense competitors and the thing that drives most of our evolution, our social evolution certainly. And so a successful person in this world was one that was good at managing friendships and alliances and keeping tabs on their family and their family's reputation. And it was essential to be able to predict and influence the behavior of other people. So having social information about others was absolutely essential. Consequently, an irresistible interest in gossip would have been selected as a way of acquiring fitness-relevant information. So this is a fancy way of saying people who were irresistibly interested in what other people were up to, who was sleeping with whom, who had powerful friends and allies, who had access to what resources. Those people who were fascinated by those questions did better than people who were kind of oblivious to this. People who weren't that interested in what others were doing were out of the loop. They got left behind in social competition. They weren't good at politics. They weren't good at managing alliances. They weren't very effective at getting and keeping mates. And so we're the descendants of busybodies. The interest that we have in gossip has been passed down to us from our ancestors who developed this skill as a way of being socially successful. So let me now acknowledge that gossip can also be bad, and this is the gossip we'll call bad gossip. Bad gossip has the goal of enhancing the individual's success in social competition. So it's all about one person trying to get ahead, usually by manipulating the reputation of other people. And it can be used as a weapon of betrayal, as also you can use gossip as a way of detecting betrayal in others. Most of the research that had been done on gossip before I started doing my work had really focused on the positive, good gossip stuff, how gossip is a means for social control. And there had been really little research about how bad gossip operates. And so most of my early studies were involved with that. So what I was trying to accomplish in a series of experiments that I did over the last 15 years or so was to test these gossip hypotheses experimentally, to focus on gossip-seeking behavior. In other words, what do we want to find out about others, rather than what people gossip about. Most of the anthropological studies that have been done before mine focused on just kind of listening in to what people talked about when they gossiped. I was more interested in what kind of information are people actively seeking when they gossip. And I was going to be especially interested in bad gossip. And I was also interested in gossip about celebrities. I'm not going to talk about that too much here, but it is part of the same package that we've inherited. So if gossip evolved as a selfish strategy, what kinds of information about other people would be most interesting to us? Well, we'd be interested in stuff that we can use, something that can affect our social standing relative to other people. So we want to know who's got money and resources and who doesn't, what kind of sexual and political activities people are involved in, and we want to know basically how trustworthy somebody is. If we interact with them, are they going to cheat us or not? And we're going to be interested in information about certain types of people. High-ranking people whose behavior can affect us. So if I'm in a tribe and there are a couple of very powerful alpha males at the top, I really am going to be interested in what they're up to, because what they do is going to influence me, affect me in some way. Whereas if I'm one of the top-ranking guys, I'm not that worried about the people farther down the food chain, because they really don't have much impact on me. I'm certainly going to be interested in people who I think of as rivals, and I'm certainly going to be interested in people that I have some sort of exchange relationship with, people who matter in my life, mates, relatives, allies, who I'm counting on. And so the kind of information that we can exploit for social gain is fairly small. We want negative information about high status people and rivals. We want dirt on people. If I'm a caveman and there's this higher ranking caveman and I find out that he's just dragged home another mastodon for dinner, or that he just got another beautiful wife, this is not interesting to me. This information is not something that I can use. But if I find out that he's had a falling out with some of his powerful allies, this is going to be really interesting to me, because it's potentially something that I can use. So when it comes to high status people and rivals, we like dirt. On the other hand, positive information about our allies and relatives is going to be very interesting, because maybe we can use this to get ahead. So if somebody in your family just inherited a lot of money, or a good friend of yours just started dating a movie star, your ears pick up when you hear this, because this is positive information and maybe it's something that might work to your advantage down the line. Turns out I think we should be especially interested in information about people of the same sex and same age as ourselves. Using the caveman analogy again, if I'm an 18-year-old caveman, I'm going to be especially interested in what other 18-year-old cavemen are up to, because these are the guys I'm competing against, and in my group, these will be the same guys I'll be competing against my whole life. So I need to be especially interested in what they're doing. I'm not going to be that interested in what 50-year-old guys are doing. They're in a whole different ball game. I'm not going to be that interested in what women are doing, other than being able to assess their reputation for whether they'd be a desirable mate or not. So we like dirt about some people, we like positive information about others, and we like information about people that we perceive as being in our own cohort. I tested these predictions in a series of many different experiments. I'll just mention the results from 3 of them here. And I won't bore you with all the details of how I did the studies and the statistical model. But here are some of the conclusions. We are indeed most interested in gossip about others who are about the same age and sex as ourselves. Gossip can indeed serve selfish interests. It's not always good gossip for the good of the group. Dishonest and irresponsible behavior will be used against high status people and people who are not our allies, and will ignore good fortune or good gossip about them. Good news about allies and friends, on the other hand, is interesting to us, and we will spread it around and use it. Females are more interested in and confide more in same-sex others than males. When we ask people, who would you share gossip with? Males right down the line said they would most likely share gossip with their romantic partners. Females were equally likely to share gossip with romantic partners and their same-sex friends. And we seem to be especially interested in monitoring what's going on in the lives of our same-sex friends. Now, stereotypically, gossip is thought of as being a female activity. And it turns out that's not necessarily the case. Men certainly gossip a lot. But men and women gossip differently, and so I'd like to at least briefly address the question of whether women are more likely to use gossip as a weapon than men are. And the answer to this question appears to be yes. Women are more likely to use gossip as a weapon than men. Now, I'm not saying that women are nastier people than men are, or that women are more aggressive than men are. Men are much more likely to engage in physical aggression. You're much more likely to be physically assaulted or murdered by a male than by a female. But when aggression does occur, females are more likely to use what's called relational gossip or relational aggression or indirect aggression, using gossip as a weapon. So women monitor the behavior and reputation of other women more than men do for other men. Men are interested in what other men are up to and what their reputations are like, but women are virtually obsessed with what's going on with other women. Women are more likely than men to engage in this indirect relational aggression. The goal is usually to find rivals and socially ostracize them, make it difficult for them to have a supportive social network. By the way, all of this information that I'm giving you is not just my opinion. This is based on an examination of the research results from dozens of studies over the last 30 years or so. Women are more sensitive than men to relational aggression and report being more devastated by it. So if people hear that somebody is talking about them, then this is a more serious problem for women than it is for men. And gossip that occurs between women is more likely to be aggressive and competitive, with the frequency of negative gossip being highest among female friends. So some of the famous cases of cyberbullying that takes place on Facebook and other social media, the perpetrators and victims of this are more likely to be females than males, because this type of aggression feeds more into the female style of aggression than the male style. So I'll end with an ancient Chinese proverb that says that the tongue is the sword of a woman, and she never lets it go rusty.